Where's my purse? Welcome to the chaos that is my life. Just a quick disclaimer, I am going to talk about things that could be triggering. Honestly, most of them are triggering for me at times. So listen with caution, but I do hope that some of you might find some support in this. Anyway, I have been diving into all the info I can find on women with ADHD, and especially those that were diagnosed later in adulthood. And it is fascinating. And I find so much of it relatable. It's kind of shocking. Like it's so glaringly obvious that I don't know. It's like finally understanding myself for the first time in like 42 years. And then at the same time, I'm definitely still processing everything. It's wild. And I appreciate you joining me for the ride. I am going into this whole project with an open mind, and I'm going to try to be honest about everything, even when it gets bad, because I know it's going to get bad at times. That's life. In fact, that brings me to this week's discussion and some new info that I just found out. And really quick, I just want to say that I am new to all of this and just kind of learning as I go. So do not take anything I say as advice. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to survive and, maybe heal some generational trauma. No biggie. Anyway, I happened to see an infographic about ADHD in women. And one of the things that was listed was that menstrual cycles can be strongly affected by ADHD symptoms and vice versa, I think. This one kind of blew my mind because over the last 6 months or so, maybe even longer, I have been having these like 2 or 3 day chunks of time where I just get massively depressed. And it would persist just long enough for me to decide that it was never going away. And then that time of the month would come and everything would be fine. So it was so obviously tied to my hormones and my cycle. But when I mentioned it to basically anyone, I was just kind of brushed off. Nobody really understood what I was trying to say or really took it seriously. But I knew something was off and that it was happening regularly. I was pretty fed up, and when I went back to the doctor to follow up on my meds, I decided to talk to her about it and get checked for ADHD. That's what I was hoping was going to happen. And I'm going to pause here really quick to tell you another interesting fact about undiagnosed ADHD in women. They are often diagnosed with anxiety, depression, or bipolar disorder. Now back to my story. So my doctor decided that I might have bipolar, and she would not touch my current meds. Because if that was the case, then I wasn't on any of the right meds and everything would have to change. Now, I knew that I didn't fit the criteria. Trust me, I have looked into every possible thing that could match my symptoms because I really, for some reason, need to put a label on this mess. Maybe give me some direction in my healing work. I don't know. I tried to explain it to her. I tried to say, I have complex PTSD and ADHD. It's all very similar, but I don't have mania. Like, I know I don't. But she wouldn't budge. Then she threw in the obligatory lecture about my weight, which is always super fun. And then she sent me on my way. I was supposed to come back in 2 months. 2 months. So I'm not feeling great, but I have to wait because she has decided something. I don't know. Like, it kind of makes sense, but I can explain to her why it's not that. I have never been a medication person. It was a sign of weakness in my family of origin, a sign of something being wrong, and especially medication for mental health. It took me so long to get up the nerve to bring any of this up at all. I was 38 before I dared to ask for the help that I desperately needed. And at that point, it wasn't really asking. It was just there was no other choice. And that's a really, really long time to suffer, you know? I wish that I didn't need medications, but I do. And I need to accept that. And I also need to get them adjusted soon. Because it does change, you know? I've been on the same thing for quite a while now. There's so much waiting and feeling terrible, not to mention being treated kind of shitty because you're asking for something to do with meds. I don't even take anything exciting, you know? And assuming I can get a medication for ADHD, I want the non-stimulant medication. I don't want anything fun. It's pretty frustrating, but I'm just pushing through the days and doing what I can. It definitely has been a slog lately, and I haven't really been able to cover it up very well, but I'm doing the best I can. There is no rushing the healthcare system. Not to mention jumping all of the hurdles like people's personal opinions. And this is why people don't get help, because you have to advocate for yourself the hardest when you feel the lowest. It is exhausting. And honestly, it's dangerous, you know? How many people just give up? I bet it's a lot, you know? I'm definitely nowhere near that bad, but it is incredibly frustrating. And part of me just wants to be whatever. I've dealt with it this long, I'll just keep going. But I'd rather not live like that, you know? Anyway, until then, I'm just going to keep doing what I can. And I have a whole list of things that I do to maintain mental wellness. And when I fail at doing them, probably because of the ADHD, everything just kind of goes to shit because they all tend to fail at the same time. And I've noticed that I really struggle the most with doing things that are actually good for me. Self-destruction has always kind of been a way of life for me, and it is proving to be a very hard habit to break. But if I can force myself to do some of the things on my list, then I can slowly begin to pull myself back out of the darkness. And I will admit this last one was pretty tough. I couldn't even bring myself to journal, and for me, that is something that is as natural and as necessary as breathing, you know? I can't think of a time since I learned how to write that I wasn't journaling in some way, as crazy as that sounds. So I know that something is off when I can't even do that. I am slowly coming back to life. I have been just existing for quite a while now, and that is a really shitty thing to realize about yourself, but it is definitely true. And like I said, I'm going to be honest here. I have done a ton of necessary inner work, shadow work, all the hard stuff that was absolutely non-negotiable if I was going to keep going. But that is not really living. That's just kind of being. There's definitely a part of me that is not ready. I am a little scared to have to start, putting myself out there and doing things again. But I also don't know if that part of me will ever be ready. It's definitely scary, but it has to be done. I can't just keep sitting around and watching life go by. It is way too much of a bummer. I don't know if this episode's too much of a bummer. I don't know. I've never been one to give up. I was actually talking about that with my husband the other day. I've been really struggling to be proud of any accomplishments that I have had in life because no event in my life was ever really about me. That's a whole other can of worms that I'm sure I'll get into eventually. But yeah, if the event in my life, if it had to somehow be about me, it couldn't be turned in any other direction, then it would be something that was just discounted, unimpressive, even shameful sometimes, Things like running a marathon. Figure that one out. Anyway, my husband thinks that I should be proud of myself regardless, and I love that, and I agree, but he just can't see it the way that I do. He likes to counter with the point that despite everything, I still have done all of these things, and that thanks to my perfectionism, I do things really well when I commit to them. He's not wrong. I think what it is that he sees the finished product and I see the struggle. I really need to find a way to start seeing things more like he does. Change the focus a little bit. I might as well. Getting into a doom spiral has definitely never been beneficial. It just wastes my time. So yeah, I'm working on it constantly. Now, to keep this episode from being a complete bummer, let's end things on a lighter note. I've got a story for you all. Oh man. Now, I tend to call my life a comedy of errors because I don't know. I tend to have weird things happen to me, and it usually makes for a funny story. Here's the latest one. I took my dog for a walk the other day. It was a gorgeous day, sunny, but a little cooler, like low 60s. Just perfect weather. We went off of our usual trail and we took a path that led down to some big flat rocks that were on the edge of the river. I thought this will be a perfect place to sit and enjoy a beautiful day. I'll just let Oz sniff around. Peaceful, right? Well, Oz chose the steepest spot on the rocks and very slowly slid down the rock and straight into the river. It was kind of absurd. It was almost like he was in slow motion, but I was far enough away that I couldn't get to him. I couldn't even contemplate what I was seeing at first. Now, Oscar is just under a year old and he has not had a chance to go swimming yet. He's played around in some rivers, but it's been really shallow. He got his front paws back onto that rock and he was not budging. There was kind of a narrow shelf of rock under the water next to him, but he would not move over to the side on his own. I tried calling him. So I took off my shoes. I climbed down there. I get onto this shelf of rock that's under the water. And I'm leaning over to try and grab his collar because he just was he would not move. He would not move side to side. He wouldn't do anything. He was frozen. And I took one too many steps because I thought the rock kept going. And the rock did not keep going. And I fell in the river in my sweatshirt with my phone in my pocket and just, completely stunned. It was quite a moment. And I even paused for a second to kind of laugh at the absurdity of it because I ended up clinging to the rock right next to the dog. We were in the same position for a minute. Luckily, the water was really low and not moving really at all. I climbed out. I scratched the hell out of one of my knees. And then I took off my drenched, heavy sweatshirt and finally got the dog out of the water. We walked back to the van just dripping wet, and that's when reality hit. This river is kind of gross, on a good day. And we were at a spot just downriver from a very large farm. And the water was super low. Ew. Ew, ew, ew. I could smell us as I drove home, just trying not to freak out and trying not to breathe. Luckily, we weren't too far from home. 2 showers later, and we were both back to normal, though honestly, the rest of the day, my skin was just crawling. It was so gross. My husband pointed out that it is the first swim of the year, something that we always kind of mark. It's not usually this gross. They're calling it the poo plunge. It was so gross. Ugh. But I will do literally anything for that dog. He is such a baby. I swear, it is a wild life sometimes. And thanks for joining me on the ride. I will have more ridiculousness for you next time, I'm sure. I hope you have a beautiful week. Take care of yourselves. And maybe even find your purse on the first try. Bye, lovelies.
A Frap Media production.